What's up, LEGO builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios. Remember those LEGO Star Wars diorama sets gathering dust at your local shopping center?
The gang's all here.
Well, I did the unthinkable and bought 2 of them, and today I'm going to be turning each one into a Clone Wars diorama featuring Delta Squad. If by any chance you aren't familiar, Delta Squad is an elite group of clone commandos who go around carrying out intense missions, doing epic things, and getting more Bacta.
Get yourself some Bacta, Commando.
Basically, Bad Batch, but cooler in every way. Also, shout out to Norarch Studios who gave me the idea for this video. It's gonna be a blast. All that out of the way, don't forget to go full Republic Commando on that like button, and let's get started. I'm going to start with the Dagobah diorama because I figured that one would be the harder of the two to build. First things first, I gotta get the parts out of the box and yeet those instructions. I bought both sets used with no figs because I wasn't about to pay full price for these, which means the pieces came in one big bag, and before I start building I want to sort them out a little and see what I'm working with and figure out how many of certain pieces I have. I will be using the frame design from the actual set because I don't have enough black pieces to build anything else. And here's where I ran into my first problem. I finished the frame and I had this big unfinished gap in the back. So I had to make the walk of shame back to my garbage bin and retrieve the instructions. And turns out I had to basically break everything I built and start over using the instructions. Once the frame was done, it's time to build the landscape. I assumed this would be the toughest set to build because it's terrain based and a lot of its piece count is eaten up by green tiles. So I was limited on what planet and scene I could do. I decided a swampy river scene in the jungles of Kashyyyk would be the best considering the pieces I had. So I'm going to build 2 riverbanks with a green swampy river flowing between them. On one side, I'm going to build a sad imitation of a tree. I'm gonna pretend it's bad because of the parts I had, but I'm just bad at building trees in general. Luckily, there was just enough foliage to cover up a decent amount of the branches. And to be honest, this looks pretty good, it's just real thick at the base. On the other side, I'm gonna build the stump of a tree and throw in some foliage to cover up the ground. I got lucky and had just enough dark tan wedge plates to make a really good looking riverbank on both sides, and since this is the last spot of land, I can use up as much dark tan as I need. If only I could tap into those massive stores of dark tan in my parts collection. I also have some stunted brown stick plants I can add to the riverbanks. What a great way to represent the lush greenery of Kashyyyk, as this is about as much a Kashyyyk mock as the sequels are good stories. Now I need to place down all the transgreen tiles that will be the water. Let me tell you, this got old real quick and reminded me of the dark days of placing thousands of clear studs on my Kato Namodia mock.
Never again, never again.
Last, it's time for the finishing touches. I added the remains of a cooking fire because clones need to eat too. There was also some silver grills that needed to be added to the frame, and then came the minifigs. I was gonna do a battle between clones and droids at first, but it just didn't feel right, so I ended up with a rare, peaceful scene instead. Diorama number 1 is in the books. It depicts Delta Squad deep in the jungles of Kashyyyk, moving towards a key enemy communications position, led by a Wookiee guide. I liked the finished build a lot more than expected. It's got a simple beauty to it and shows that not every mock needs to be a complex masterpiece. The dark green water cutting the land in half looks really cool, and the tree gives the mock some much needed height. When building this small and simple, I think it's important to break up the terrain in some way, whether by color or build, and so once again, that river really carries this mock. I added Sev wading through the water with Fixer about to go in to give this mock a gritty patrol in the jungles of Vietnam vibe. Diorama number 2 is the trash compactor, and hopefully this build will go smoother considering I don't need to first throw away then retrieve the instructions. If you're wondering why I only did 2 diorama alt builds, the third set is the Death Star Trench Run and is the smallest of the 3 piece count wise, and the set is also a micro build, and I didn't think I'd have much success because of the lack of parts. This mock is going to be a secret entrance to an old building deep in the lower levels of Coruscant, so it's going to look very run down and dilapidated with trash littering the ground outside, as the lower levels are figuratively and literally the garbage bin of Coruscant. So I figured the pieces of this set would translate over to that pretty well. I am going to use the instructions once again as I want to build some walls, and I figured the easiest way to do that would be start with a portion of the base shown in the instructions and then change up the rest of the wall to look how I want. There's also going to be a door in this wall that the commandos are about to breach. I could have just used the door design from the set, but I wanted this set to be as different as possible. Now that I've got one wall done and still have lots of pieces available, I'm going to do my own design for the second wall, but don't get too excited because it's just going to look exactly like the other one. And that's it for structures. I was going to add 2 side walls and create a doorway at the end of an alley, but once again, I just thought that was too similar to the original build. Plus, this wider, more open floor plan will give me more space for minifigs and side builds. Once the walls are done, it's time to assemble them on the build. I must say, I'm really starting to enjoy making city mocs, and I have another big one planned after Coruscant.
City boy! City boy!
The last thing to do is use the remaining parts to create random pieces of garbage, droid remains, engines, power stations, and bits of ships, all to be dumped around the door to help hide it from unwanted visitors and represent the overall dilapidated state of the slums of Coruscant. I also put the LEGO Star Wars tile on the front just in case anyone happens to wonder what this is. Deep in the lower levels of Coruscant, Delta Squad is on a mission to capture and extract a high-level senator who has been leaking war secrets to the Separatists for profit. They learned of a meeting between the two sides in an abandoned scrap metal factory and are about to breach a rear entryway, having taken out the guard and dismantled the camera. The other members watch his back as Scorch does what he does best, opening things that don't want to be opened via explosive ordinances. As I was building this, I was worried it wouldn't turn out very good because it seemed like I just wasn't able to capture what I pictured in my head with these bricks, but I must say this build turned out very nice, like displayed on one of my shelves nice, and I feel like I was ultimately able to achieve what I was planning. The trash pieces are what really brought the whole build together and added that much needed sense of realism and detail. Unfortunately, with all the garbage, I didn't have enough room to include Sev, so just pretend he's giving the squad cover from an adjacent building. I also wanted to include a second guard because one just didn't seem like enough security, but once again, no room. This video was so much fun to make. Who knew all it took to enjoy a LEGO set was to build something completely different with it. I was going to combine the 2 mocs and create one bigger diorama at the end of the video, but I just couldn't think of a good build using these parts, so I didn't want to just take apart the mocs and build something else just to make the video longer. I think the lower levels of Coruscant build was my favorite just because it had more going on, but it did have the more versatile and mock friendly pieces of the 2 sets. I hope you enjoyed this video because there are more diorama challenges to come, and next time I won't be so limited on parts. Before you go, don't forget to leave me a comment with which one of these builds was your favorite and what Star Wars dioramas you would like to see LEGO do next, and I will catch you in the next one, but until then, happy building.